صباح الخير لكل مستمعينا.
Welcome to Radio Baladi, the first Arab, Middle Eastern, and American simulcast radio show. Radio Baladi is broadcast every Friday morning on WNZK 690 AM from 8 until 9 Eastern Time on Good Morning Michigan with Layla Al-Husseini. Our call-in number 248-557-3300. And now, stay tuned for the best radio talk show on Arab and American issues with your host, Layla Al-Husseini.
And this is Ray Hanania, not Layla Al-Husseini. Our number is 248-557-3300. And you can join us and share your opinion. It's Friday, May 15, 2020. I'm Ray Hanania, the special U.S. correspondent for the Arab News newspaper, and you're listening to the Arab Street Radio and podcast broadcast from Detroit, Michigan through 690 AM WNZK Radio. We're doing a lot here, technology, so I'm just kind of making sure everything is going, because we're not only live on WNZK AM 690 Radio, we're also broadcasting on Zoom, and people are attending, which is kind of nice to see. All you got to do is click that Zoom link, and you'll be able to watch, the show. Eventually, we're going to have our guests are going to Zoom in, but we got to make sure that the broadcast is both, because I'm in Chicago broadcasting. We do have a guest on, I'll introduce in a moment, who is in Doha, Qatar. So the technology is, you got to make sure everything works perfectly, and sometimes it doesn't always do that. Anyway, I hope everyone is healthy and surviving the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic. And let me just mention, the Arab Street Radio is a part of the USArabRadio network, hosted by Layla Al-Husseini, in an effort to energize and empower Arab Americans to stand up for their rights. For more information, go to my website at hanania.com, and afterwards you can get the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or by visiting my podcast website at thearabstreet.org. Remember, our radio show call-in number is 248-557-3300. If you want to join on Zoom, you can also chat and type questions there. We're happy to do that. That link to Zoom is on our Facebook page, Twitter, and also on LinkedIn. Our discussion this morning, I wanted to kind of bring it out to talk about the Nakba. It's been 72 years, and, I'm much more critical of our role as Palestinians. Have we really done a good job? I don't think we have. I think we've done a terrible job, and given all the suffering we've had to go through, I expect more and I expect better. You would think that when people suffer, and the way we have as Palestinians, that we would find a way to come together and end the divisions, divide our community. And for some reason, we just can't seem to do that. We're going to bring on our guest, Ali Younes, who is the correspondent for Al Jazeera, based in Doha, Qatar. And Ali, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, great, Ali. It's good to hear you. We can hear you loud and clear. Technology, when you can control it, is amazing. So you wrote a piece for Al Jazeera just this morning that came out. You want to talk a little bit about that? And then let's talk about this idea. I don't know if you agree with me, but I think that sometimes our activists are more concerned about themselves than they are about resolving the conflict, and they tend towards extremism. But tell us about your article that you published at Al Jazeera this morning.
Yes. My piece in Al Jazeera English website, aljazeera.com, it's titled The Nakba Day. Today is Palestinian commemorate the 1948 establishment of Israel in historic Palestine. That was yesterday, the declaration of the State of Israel, May 14th. So Palestinians, choose a second day to talk about their Nakba, or catastrophic events that befell upon them in establishing a state in their own country. So,
right.
Yeah, so my story it talks about the Nakba is not a historic event of 1948 and that Palestinians should move on, as my guests in my story speak about. It's rather is a continuous event that did not start in 1948, actually. It was started in the 1880s when Zionists, Jewish Zionists, moved into Palestine, started buying lands, and started establishing colonies, small nevertheless. But in the 1880s, it all started out during the Ottoman Empire, to be quite honest with you. Because of land reform, the Palestinian peasants did not register their lands in their own names, so registered in big families' names, who happened to be absentee families in Beirut, in Damascus, in other cities. So those big families sold the land. So the peasants, Palestinians, end up without a land. So therefore, the Zionist settlers who came into Palestine at that time were able to establish the genesis of their cities that eventually in 1948 became the State of Israel. So yeah, that's in a nutshell. But the key thing in the story, I'm speaking to Joseph Massad. He's a Palestinian. From Jaffa. He said Palestinians have to resist in all means, in the culture and art, and journalism, and writings, and dance.
And that's
to reverse. I mean, his argument is a Nakba is reversible. It's not for eternity. It's not forever. Palestinians can, at one point in history, reconstitute themselves back into Palestine. That's what he's saying. And
listen, and I love your article because and of course, I respect your writing. You're one of the better writers in the U.S. Among the many Arabs, and I've covered journalism 45 years. Being Arab myself, I consider you at my class and level. You are a journalist. You write stories to get at the truth. You don't write propaganda like a lot of the other writers often do in our community. And I get it, because the media in this country is very anti-Arab. They push us out. They exclude us. So we have to fight, more than just be a journalist. But I just wanted to I just want to explore Joe Massad's comment just a little bit further, because I agree you have to resist. But the word itself is misleading. When you say resist, I don't think our community really understands what resist means. To them, it's being angry, it's protesting, it's rejecting, it's
military.
Even in sometimes it's about violence. But we've never, really pursued the most important part of resistance, and that's building coalitions through telling our story in a full, proper, and accurate way. We don't seem to think that we tell it in anger. We don't tell it through communications. We don't make friends. Why wouldn't Americans identify with us? Why wouldn't they support us? Why do you think we've failed to get the one country that dominates the Middle East, the United States? Because they do. Is there any other country that has more influence than the U.S. in our future, do you think?
Well, Joseph Massad argues that point, precisely what you're saying. And he argues that in the United States, a lot of the Christian, fundamentalists, they have a lot of power in this country. And see it is imperative for them, for those Christian Zionists or Christian fundamentalists, who they see that they should usher the Jews into Palestine to hasten the second coming of Jesus Christ. So there is an activistic push to establish Israel, to push Jews and to support Israel and to support the Jews to go into Palestine, that when Jesus comes, he will in order to be converted. And
but that's a small group. That's a very small group of Christians.
It's a very powerful group.
Yes, well, only because the other Christians are disorganized. But the majority of Christians in the United States, they're distant. They don't even realize that Christians exist. Arab Christians exist. They don't even see us. They think we're an anomaly. So they don't identify with the Arab Christian cause. And I'm not just saying it's a Christian Arab cause, it's a Muslim Arab cause too. I'm just saying that the very allies that the Palestinians could have in the United States, we do not outreach to them. We do not speak
Mossad,
with them.
Yeah. In Mossad's point of view, he says in other writings, not just in my piece. In my piece, I just took excerpts of what he said. But in other writings, he says, Palestinian Christians are not a target or a target of support by other Christians in the West. But Jews are, because Jews are targeted to be converted from Judaism into Christianity. And that's why the underlying support is not because they see it's a political issue and Jews were persecuted and therefore they have to find a homeland for them in Palestine. And in fact, Zionism, argued that the reason for anti-Semitism in the West, because the presence of Jews, and to end anti-Semitism, you have to take Jews out of Europe, which is exactly what anti-Semites want. Kick the Jews out, and Zionists say,
I think in the 1940s and even through the 19th century, most of the 19th century and the early 20th century, you're absolutely right, it was the West that persecuted Jews, not the Arabs. I mean, listen, Jews have been persecuted all over the world, and there were some persecuted in the Middle East and the Arab world. We can't say no, but the Arab world offered them sanctuary, support. It was the West that wouldn't allow them to come to the United States, for example, during World War II when the Nazis were killing them. We were the ones, but at the same time, we went there to free them.
Yeah, the Jews in the Arab world, prior to the State of Israel was established, were prosperous members of the community. And in fact, in Iraq, there were like over maybe 150,000 to 200,000 Iraqi Jews, the largest community in the Middle East. They were ministers in the government, Jewish ministers, But, and that's a
So what happened? So what happened? Yeah, what happened? Why did the Jewish community then look at us as the biggest enemy? What changed? How did that change over 72 years or more?
You mean the Jewish community of the
previous? They don't view us. Yes, they don't view us as the people of giving them sanctuary and support.
Well, because we are here, when people say Jews, they're conflating two main ideas: Zionism and Jewishness or Judaism.
A political movement.
Yes, so two different things. Jews, as a Jewish person, they themselves oppose Zionism because they feel themselves, I'm a Jewish person, but I'm an American, you know? But Zionists, I'm a Jewish person, but I believe I have to extract myself from my homeland, go establish another country in a different country. And Jews in the Arab world, they saw themselves as Iraqi Jews, as Moroccan Jews, Yemeni Jews, as Iranian Jews. But, in the 40s, there was some maybe violence against him, but nobody was killed in Iraq. And Mossad has told me that because I checked that point in the previous piece. And there were a lot of Zionist propaganda. And there were secret missions to airlift the Jews from the Arab world, from Morocco, with the collaboration of the late King Hassan of Morocco and the Yemeni Imam, the leader of Yemen at the time, and the Iraqis, moved through the Kurdistan and through Iran, airlifted to Israel because Israel at that time wanted to bring Jews in to establish a majority in the territories it established itself in, what we called in 1948, the coastal regions of Palestine. So the Jews of the Arab world were airlifted. They were not pushed out. There were not pogroms against Jews. Yes, there was a lot of commotions, a lot of violence. Property was seized. But this is not as widespread as people making it to be,
Right.
But the fact remains they were airlifted in secret missions in collaboration with the Arab leadership at the time. I mean, this is history.
Right.
I'm not arguing at that point. People could check it out.
Right. And yet, we've not advanced in 72 years.
Exactly.
We, instead of moving forward, we continue to move backwards. And the Arab and the Palestinian activists refuse to acknowledge that. They continue to say that we're winning, we're defeating Israel, we're exposing Israel. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure. There are like two worlds in Israel. They're the Israelis living in Israel as if nothing's happening on their side of the wall, and Palestinians living under Israeli occupation, under this aspect of continued suffering. It's terrible.
Yes, Palestinians are victims, of this. obviously, and I don't want to blame the victims for being victims,
No, I get it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are huge mistakes on part of the Palestinians, and as you know, as much as I do, that the Palestinian leadership has failed because it got involved in Arab politics in Lebanon and Jordan, in all this regional Arab politics, and distracted itself from really focusing on rebuilding the Palestinian community, rebuilding the cause, the Palestinian cause, to reconstitute Palestinian refugees, go back to their homes and towns. Yet it was corrupt, okay? It was party politics, and it was a complete failure, as opposed to the Israeli.
I have a little different view, but listen, Ali, my guest on the line is Ali Younes. He's a writer with Al Jazeera English online, and he just wrote a nice piece about the Nakba for the newspaper there. But we're going to take a quick break here at the Arab Street Radio with my guest, Ali Younes. I'm Ray Hanania. Give us a few minutes here to give our sponsors a plug, and we'll come right back. So we'll be right back right after these messages.
Because of your generosity, Life was able to provide over 1 million meals to people in 19 different countries across the globe. With your support, we will be able to continue our efforts. Please donate today by calling 1-800-827-3543 or by visiting us online at www.lifeusa.org.
إلي ساعة عم بستناك مشان نروح نتغدى بالشام.
الشام؟
ايه بالشام ومو بالشام.
شلون صارت هي؟
بدل ما نروح نتغدى بالشام
ايه
جابوا لنا الأكلات الشامية الطيبة لعنا لهم.
وشلون بقى؟
هذا مطعم دماس عم يعمل كل الأكلات الشامية الطيبة هو.
وطيبة؟
طيبة كتير.
شرفوا نتغدى سوا بمطعم دماس.
الأكل الشامي الأصيل فقط بدماس كوزين. زوروهم على 28841 أورشاد ليك بفارمينغتون هيلز، ولطلباتكم اتصلوا على 248-987-4609. That's 248-987-4609. دماس كوزين and catering، جبنا لكم الشام لعندكم.
When it comes to reproductive medicine, IVF Michigan Fertility Centers are the recognized leaders. With locations in Bloomfield Hills and 5 other cities in Michigan and Ohio, IVF has experts in all aspects of the field. As a founding member of IVF Michigan Fertility Centers, Dr. Nicholas Shama is one of the leading reproductive endocrinologists in Michigan and Ohio. Dr. Shama has performed over 10,000 IVF cases and has helped thousands of couples fulfill their dreams of parenthood. American board certified in both obstetrics and gynecology and reproductive endocrinology and infertility, Dr. Nicholas Shama is a very caring, compassionate, expert physician that understands not only the medical but also the emotional toil of infertility on his patients. When it's time, get personalized care from Dr. Nicholas Shama at IVF Michigan Fertility Centers in Michigan and Ohio. Call toll-free 855-952-9600, 855-952-9600.
And again, it's Friday, May 15th, 2020. I'm Ray Hanania, the special U.S. correspondent for the Arab News newspaper, and you're listening to the Arab Street Radio and podcast broadcast from Detroit, Michigan through 690 AM WNZK Radio. We're talking about the 72-year anniversary of the Nakba. My guest with me on the line, talking with me about it and sharing some thoughts, is Al Jazeera writer and reporter Ali Younes, journalist for many years. I've known Ali forever. He was based here in Chicago. Now he's in Doha, Qatar. And we're talking about what happened 72 years, and it's not gotten better. The Nakba, the catastrophe. What has happened? And my argument is that I don't think the activists have done a good job. Some people, as Ali mentioned, I think a few minutes ago, that there was a lot of corruption. But, Ali, for many years under Yasser Arafat, he he was successful. I mean, the idea of corruption exists because he has to protect our assets at a time when nobody recognized him, and even when they were under oppression. You cannot put the money in a bank in the United States and say, oh, yeah, we're going to be treated fairly. Any of that money that was put any place openly would have been confiscated by the Israelis, by the United States, by a lot of governments. So to me, I think this idea of corruption is an excuse to explain what I think is the corruption of the activists who thrive on the conflict. They don't want to compromise. They can't get over their anger and their hate. What do you think of that perspective, Ali?
Well, I think, look, I believe, as I mentioned in the piece, that the Nakba for Palestinian is not a historic event in the past, and people moved on. It's still continuous because if you look at Israel today, in 1948, it established itself on 78% of Palestine, the 22%, which is eastern part of Palestine, that was annexed by Jordan and renamed as the West Bank, and we know it as the West Bank today.
More than we do Palestine. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. We call it the West Bank more than we call it Palestine.
Yeah, because
we even call Israel instead of calling it Palestine. Why don't we just call it Palestine?
Well, because Palestine was dismembered, in 1948. Yeah. Jordan got a piece, Israel got a piece, and Egypt got a piece in Gaza under military control between 1948 and 67. So in 1967, Israel occupied the entire 27,000 kilometer of the landmass of Palestine. Now, so as we see, Palestinians to compromise, but the Zionist project is ongoing. It's not ending. And the deal of the century, and now Netanyahu going to annex more lands.
What's the difference? Let me ask you a question. What's the difference if he annexes all of the West Bank? This is him saying he's going to do whatever he wants. They already have annexed the West Bank. They've taken control over all of Palestine. They run it. They decide everything. So now they throw in a few words like, oh, we're going to annex it. What does that mean? Yeah. They're going to annex it. Does it change anything for the people that live there?
Well, in 1993, the PLO, the Palestinian, and Yasser Arafat have signed an agreement with Israel called the Oslo Accord, which Joseph Massad called is the real deal of the century that Israel got from the Palestinians. So in 1993, 5 years later, there was supposed to be a Palestinian state and a West Bank, 1967 borders. Now saying, I'm going to annex 30% of that. I'm going to leave the Palestinians in some cities, in Jenin, Nablus, Ramallah, here and there, and you keep Gaza because Gaza is so small. So what's the reason for Palestinians to believe that they will end up with a state? They will end up with a state that is not really a state. It's not contiguous. It's not viable. It's not real estate. And that state, Thomas Friedman said, when Palestinians become like Canadians, friendly. But Canadians with what? I mean, I think the real argument...
Thomas Friedman is probably our worst enemy. The far right in Israel is less of an enemy than the left in the United States that have talked us down from our rights, because Tom Friedman at the New York Times dilutes our rights. He dilutes it and he changes it and he undermines our justice. I agree with you that, Israel has done all this stuff, but what responsibility do we have? The Oslo Peace Accords didn't just collapse because, the Israelis did everything. I mean, they assassinated Rabin, and then Hamas launched, suicide bombings. They had every opportunity to do something in that peace accord. Hamas took a stand to destroy the peace accords. They did that, and they've grown. The only thing that's improved, and maybe improved is the wrong word, the only thing that has grown in this conflict has been the religious movement among Palestinians, Hamas. They have continued to grow, and they are, in my opinion, the most destructive part of our future.
Well, I tell you, if you blame Hamas for all the wrongs, I think,
not all the wrongs, but a lot.
Yeah, that's a debatable point. But I think Palestinians, they have a formidable foe to face in Israel, and its machine, and its wealth and its support around the world. Palestinian support around the world is dwindling, especially in the Arab world, in the Arab regime, nonetheless, not in the Arab population, because the Arab regimes, they think as a state, and my interest is with Israel, as Bahrain, as some other countries in the region, and Morocco, for example, in the Gulf region. They all have formal and informal ties, and formal with Israel. So no matter what Israel does, Egypt and Jordan will continue to have peace treaty. They'll continue to have relationship with Israel. But the population in the Arab world, I'm a reporter, so I talk to a lot of people all the time. So I think the population overall in the Arab world are very anti-Israel, are very opposing the presence of Israel in this region, and they support the Palestinians, not because they love the Palestinians, because they see Israel. And I mentioned that in my point. I'm quoting Adnan Abu Adi, who's a Palestinian from Nablus, 87 years old, former chief of the Royal Court of Jordan. He's, the Arabs don't like defeat, and they see Israel as an alien body in the midst of the Arab world. I mean, that's what the man is saying. And if you sentimentally, you don't see Arabs that are supporting Israel as population.
No, don't you think that's part of it? That's what I wrote about this week at the Arab News. My column this week was about the only way to stop Israel that the Arab world has to make its voice heard on annexation, and they're doing nothing. There isn't one Arab country, none of them, that have done anything. And they're separate, and they fight together more with each other than they do with the Israelis. We fight with Qatar and Saudi Arabia, all of them. I mean, there's no country that's excluded. Jordan is in poverty practically. Their military is like, I'm looking at they at one time were the biggest Arab world military outside of Egypt, which is more of a house of cards. And today they're like depressed. They're poverty stricken. Egypt is like, what's going on over there? I don't even think Egypt thinks they're Arab, and Syria is in total war with itself. It's amazing.
Yeah, because in the past, before Oslo, Iraq was intact, Egypt was intact under Hosni Mubarak, nonetheless. Syria was intact, and the region was stable in a sense, and Libya was intact, Yemen was intact. So the region was stable, albeit non-democratic, but it was stable. And the traditional leadership was still there in Saudi Arabia and in Syria. And they all opposed, going, toward Israel, single-handedly as one country at a time. Saudi Arabia has, in 1981, they had the King Fahd peace plan. Israel rejected. In 2002, Saudi Arabia again had the Arab Peace Initiative that they offered Israel. In 1981, in 2002, a peace treaty with the entire Arab world and the Muslim world, in exchange of establishing a Palestinian state and having peace with Israel once for all. Israel rejected all that. So the Arab world now...
and they rejected it because they know that. But didn't they reject it because they know they can reject it? Who are we? What do? We have put no pressure on Israel. What we've done is put pressure on ourselves. Let's just go to the phone lines. We have a guest, Jerry Haba, always listens to our program, very reliable and dedicated. Jerry, you're on the line with Ali Younes of Al Jazeera, but you only got a minute or two. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jerry.
Okay, no problem. We'll make it 1.5 minutes. Mr. Ray, thank you for taking my call. Good morning to you, and good morning to the famous man, Mr. Ali Younes from Al Jazeera.
Yes, he's good.
Good morning, Mr. Ali, and good to see you back, even during this crisis of Corona. But indeed, you and Ray, you show you have a good immunity system, and thank you for being in the show. Mr. Ali Younes, about Palestine, don't you think, Mr. Ali Younes, as an expert, that Palestine, they lost, Palestinian leaders, I should say, lost a lot of golden opportunity in the past that they reject when Israel extend their hand from the late Prime Minister Ishaq Rabin and the treaty and that, And even before that, they were trying to give the Palestine what they took in 1967, and they refused. And then we end up losing more territory and end up to have two states, one in Gaza and one in West Bank. Ismail Haniyeh from one side and Mr. Abbas from the other side. Don't you think the split of the Palestinian leadership also was a nail on the Palestinian matter? So I just want you to refer to that. And at the end, don't you think, Mr. Ali Younes, the Palestinian matter, it become like a commercial, the leader negotiate about Palestine for their own benefit, for their own interest. It was not to the benefit of the Palestinian people. Thank you for taking my call, and God bless you.
All right. Thank you, Jerry Haba. Listen, before you answer that, Ali, we got to take another quick break, and then when we come back, if you want to comment on Jerry's observation, that would be great. I'm Ray Hanania here at WNZK AM 690 Radio Live, broadcasting in Detroit. I'm in Chicago. My guest, Ali Younes at Al Jazeera, is in Qatar. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back right after these messages.
If halal is important to your family, you can trust that Miramar will offer not only the highest quality halal products, but the best tasting and healthiest foods that can be placed on your family table with confidence. Miramar is the first and oldest halal certified food brand in America, serving the Arab and Muslim community, and offers a wide range of halal food products. Check out Miramar's halal food selection today by visiting Miramar's exclusive distributor, Ziyad Brothers Importing, at www.ziyad.com.
مركز طب رهاب للعلاج الطبيعي بإدارة الدكتور محمد فرح حسين، أخصائي العلاج الطبيعي بخبرة أكثر من 13 عاما. طب رهاب يقدم خدمات العلاج الطبيعي وإعادة التأهيل، ويضم مجموعة من أفضل أخصائي التشخيص الدقيق للحالات المرضية، مع خبرة عالية في التعامل مع الحالات التي تحتاج إلى إعادة تأهيل وعناية خاصة بعد العمليات والكسور. طب رهاب يستقبل كل الحالات المتعلقة بألم الرقبة، الظهر، المفاصل، شلل الوجه، الانزلاق الغضروفي، عرق النساء، الحوادث وإصابات العمل. خبيرات في المعالجة النسائية لخصوصيات تامة للسيدات. عندما تبحثون عن رعاية متميزة، اقصدوا توب ريهاب للعلاج الطبيعي، الواقع على 15001 ميشيغان افنيو، وللمواعيد اتصلوا على 313-846-0555. That's 846-0555.
KASHAT's Mediterranean Market and Shish Kebab offers a great array of your favorite Mediterranean meals. Meals range from lamb specialties, shawarma sandwiches, seafood dinners, and they offer special big trays of your favorite food, plus much more. KASHAT's Mediterranean Market and Shish Kebab address is 32839 Northwestern Highway in Farmington Hills. Their phone number is 248-538-9552. That number again is 248-538-9552, and the supermarket is open from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. KASHAT's Mediterranean Market and Shish Kebab will definitely leave you satisfied.
And welcome back again. It's May 15, 2020, Friday. And I'm Ray Hanania, special U.S. correspondent for the Arab News newspaper. And you're listening to the Arab Street Radio and podcast broadcast from Detroit, Michigan through 690 AM WNZK Radio. Our guest on the line is Ali Younes. He's a writer with Al Jazeera, and of course, I appreciate his taking the time to join us. What do we do, Ali? What do you think needs to be done or changed?
Yeah, I want to talk to answer Jerry's, question.
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
I mean, Palestinians have, agreed with Israelis in 1993, the Oslo Accord. Okay, that mutual recognition. The Palestinians have recognized Israel's right to exist in Palestine as a state of Israel, and the Israelis have agreed to let the Palestinians establish their state on the 1967 borders. And there's two key things. One, that Palestinians' one key concession was to accept Jerusalem, East Jerusalem, as their capital, because Jerusalem as a whole, since 1947, was not recognized as the Israel capital because it was excluded from the decision to divide Palestine as an Arab territory and Jewish territory, the 1947 decision, that is. So Jerusalem was left out, and Palestinians came along under Yasser Arafat and recognized Israel, take Western Jerusalem and the eastern part, which is the old city with all the religious institutions are in, the mosques and churches. So, and 1993, 25, 30 years later, there's nothing happened for the Palestinians. So the argument that Palestinians have rejected the Israeli hand, I think many Palestinians would disagree with it.
Yeah, but I think that Hamas rejected it, didn't they? They're like half of the movement, aren't they? So that's half our power. They rejected it from the beginning.
Hamas did, in the 90s, Hamas did reject that. But if you talk to any Hamas official today, if you read any Hamas literature today, and I'm speaking to, I always interviewed them, and they say, look, we're not opposing a Palestinian state on 1967 borders. I mean, it's out there. It's in
right. But how did they get? So, but they do oppose.
They came along.
They do oppose negotiating and compromise. You can't just say, okay, this is what we want. You must do that. It's not going to happen. Whoever negotiates like that, if you have everything, Ali, and I say to you, okay, I want peace, give me this, you're not going to say, okay, yeah, I'm going to give you this because I trust you. You're going to negotiate with me, and you're going to change the border.
But Hamas is not the one who's negotiating. It's the PLO.
Yeah, but Hamas doesn't want that, though. Hamas is basically saying they do not want that, because if they did...
Yeah, Hamas is not part of the PLO. Yeah, Hamas is not part of the PLO, and it's not in a position to negotiate. Because
no, but they are in a position to stop.
It's the U.S. government that negotiates, not the Libertarian Party negotiate with foreign countries. So the PLO is an official representative of Palestinians, as recognized one negotiate, not Hamas. Hamas is a group within the Palestinian national movement, that is, not the leader of the Palestinian people as a whole.
But they act like a government. They have their own government in Gaza.
They do,
make their own decisions. Yeah, they engage in war and conflict. Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not blaming everything on Hamas, but I am blaming the divisions in our community with making us weak.
Yeah.
And I do blame those divisions. You and I, we can talk. We don't have to agree. We talk, we work together, we help each other. But there are Arabs in our own community who take it one step further. They don't like you. Probably more than they don't like the Israelis. They hate you. They hate me more than they hate the Israelis. They would rather argue and fight with the Israelis than talk with you and me. And that's the problem in our community. Isn't that what it is? That we have people that divide us because it's to their benefit? You know, they want
what are you going to do? I mean, that's a human nature. You know?
No, it isn't
you
human
can't
nature.
change people.
Well, I mean, listen.
Yeah, within the Jewish community, by the way, there's a lot of divisions within the Jewish community. But there's a state. You know, there are a lot of divisions among Jews, among Zionists, religious and not religious, secular, reform. A lot of conflict in the U.S., a lot of conflict in the U.S., between the Christians and seculars and conservatives and liberals and Democrats. So it's part of the political nature of having to deal with other groups. Palestinians are no different. But the difference is the Palestinians are fragmented without having a state. If they were fragmented or corrupt and having a state, they still have their own state, and eventually we'll come back to it. But, Palestinians will continue to be fragmented and continue to be stateless and to be victims of Israelis and other Arab regimes as well.
So what do you think needs to be done, Ali? And let's talk about that. We have one more segment after this next break in a few minutes. But so let's spend on what do we need to do? What do you think needs to be done, in your opinion?
I think the Palestinian, because when you say Palestinians, Ray, Palestinians are wide and far. In my story, I mentioned that of the Nakba, that about between 750 to 900,000 Palestinians were kicked out of Palestine, became refugees. Nowadays, There are 150,000 remained in Israel at the time. Now they are 1.5 million. There are about 5 million in Gaza and the West Bank, and there are 6 million outside. So between 12 to 13 million Palestinians around the world with different nationalities, different cultures, different religions. So they're not, homogenous group as in one country. They are widespread, different affiliations. I think the focus is Palestine. I think Palestinians, and Joseph Massad argues, they will have to continue to resist, to assert their own nationhood and collective self. And
how do you do that?
In culture, in art, in music, in dance.
We do that, though. We do that already.
Because Zionism strive to erase you from history, Ray.
Yes, they are, physically.
They are
but not,
but
I mean, physically, they've displaced us. But we exist. We're in the United States. We're in the West Bank. We're in the Arab world. We're in Europe. And yet we do. How do we resist? I mean, we go back to violence, because that hasn't worked. We used violence. It didn't work. It made it worse. I think my strategy and my idea is we need to work on the United States. We need to mount the education process and accept the fact that it's going to take 10 years, because 10 years from now we'll still be exactly where we are today, Ali, you and I, and the Palestinians. Things will not have changed. It'll just get worse. So we should assume that it's going to take 10 years, and we should work on the Americans, and we should mount an effective campaign using the Arab world and Arab world money and the ingenuity of the Palestinians to educate Americans and get them on our side and strip them of their blind loyalty to Israel. We need to do that. And if we don't do it, we'll always be in a diaspora. We'll be commemorating the 154th year of the Nakba in 72 years. That's where we're headed.
I totally agree. I think, and there's a push against the Palestinians having worked in the United States. The BDS movement, for example.
Yes.
There are laws, and you covered it, and I covered it in the U.S. There are laws in some states, and that you cannot support or boycott Israel. It would be illegal to get a contract from a government, U.S. government, on U.S. campuses and colleges and schools and universities. It's illegal to criticize Israel because it will be labeled as anti-Semitic, and that's illegal. Yeah. And it should be illegal to be anti-Semitic. But Jews, if I was a Jewish person, I know some Jewish friends who are oppose Israeli occupation, and if that Jewish person on campus criticizes Israel, that Jewish person will be labeled as anti-Semitic automatically, according to the law and according to the regulations that imposed on colleges and universities. So there is a counter push. It isn't easy that you want to push an education campaign, and the counter push to that is enshrined in law that you cannot criticize, that you cannot boycott, that you cannot voice your opinion, without being labeled, a malicious label as being anti-Semitic, So the task ahead is very, very high, and the wall is very, very tall wall to climb for many of those who are supporting the Palestinians, whether they are Jewish Americans or Palestinian Americans or Arab Americans or just Americans, Christian Americans who want to support the Palestinians. So it's a very tough situation in the U.S.
Yeah, I still want to talk about what we can do. We got one final break, Ali. And again, it was very kind of you to join us here on radio at WNZK AM 690 and just to talk about this. At least you're reasoned. I can have a reasoned discussion with you. There are a lot of people that we can't discuss this with because they can't get past their emotions. But let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk some more about the 72-year anniversary commemoration of the Nakba, which Ali Younes accurately points out really started longer. I'm Ray Hanania. We're on the Arab Street Radio and podcast. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back right after these messages.
Are you going to start a restaurant or a grocery store soon? Do you need floor plans and designs? Call Naji Abood at 734-744-9796. Do you want to buy kitchen and restaurant equipment at discount prices? Call Najee Abood now, 734-744-9796. New Concept Products and Design, the trademark of kitchen equipment. 5% discount on all purchases of $75,000 or more. New Concept Products and Design, new location, 31185 Schoolcraft in Livonia. Learn more at www.newconceptproducts.com. Call Najee Abood, 734-744-9796.
مرحبا سعيد.
أهلا علا.
ليش هالمقابلة الفاترة هي؟ بيقول المثل لاقيني ولا تغديني.
يمه زعلتي، شنو رأيك إذا لقيتك وأيضا غديتك بأحسن مطاعم ميشيغان مطعم أشتاه؟
والله فكرة، أفضل الأطباق والمقبلات العربية والعراقية وأحلى ملقا.
ولا تنسين اللحوم الطازجة مباشرة من ملحمة عشتار لزباين عشتار، وملحمة عشتار توفر اختيارات متنوعة من كافة أنواع اللحوم وبأسعار متميزة وجودة أيضا مميزة. ملحمة عشتار تقع على 36865 راين رود في مدينة ستيرلينغ هايت.
وأكيد أحلى لمة وأطيب لقمة في مطعم عشتار اللي عنوانه 3625 15 مايل رود في مدينة ستيرلينغ هايت. هاتف 586-698-2585 586-698-2585.
يلا علا،
يلا عشتار للجودة وكرم الضيافة عنوان
مطعم عشتار.
When you're looking for the best in optical care, Dr. EMAD NAKKASH is your doctor to see. With years of experience and thousands of successful procedures performed, you can trust your eyes to Dr. EMAD NAKKASH. See Dr. EMAD NAKKASH and his professional staff for your eye care needs. There's 2 locations to serve you. In Hazel Park, call 248-336-3937. 248-336-3937. In Rochester Hills, call 248-299-3937. That's 248-299-3937.
And welcome back to the Arab Street Radio and Podcast. I'm Ray Hanania here at WNZK AM 690 Radio. We're trying to do all the technology, and we were using Zoom to kind of broadcast. We got to work out the kinks on Zoom, but we'll get it done. But the audio podcast is perfect. On the line with us is Ali Younes, a writer at Al Jazeera English. Online, and you could read his columns by visiting them online at Al Jazeera English. Ali, it's like, we go through this conversation every day, all the time, and just either on radio or with friends. We talk about what do we do, resistance. It sounds like violence. What are we not doing, do you think? What are we not doing that we should do?
I think, the Palestinians alone, it cannot be done by the Palestinians alone. I mean, the Palestinian cause, nevertheless, is an Arab cause. Remember that Israel is still occupying Syrian territory, the Golan Heights. They just annexed last year. Annexed it in 1984. But the U.S. recognized it in 2019 as part of Israel. So Israel is not even stopping with the Palestinians. They occupied the Sinai Desert for decades. In 1956 first, and then in 1967. In 1956, until Eisenhower said, get out of Sinai. And then in 1967, until they had peace treaty with Israel and took Israel out of the confrontation with Israel. So Egypt is now sidelined, has become friendly with Israel, and nevertheless anti-Palestinian. Jordan is at the same time. So if you take Syria out, which is now Syria is engulfed, like you said, is a war with itself. Iraq is out. Saudi Arabia is not in the equation because it's far away, and the least of their mind is Palestine or the Palestinians. So, and the Palestinians are alone. And they are alone not as a state, they are alone as fragmented group of political people. They are under occupation in 1967, and Gaza is, and I was in Gaza last year, is alone, and it's blockaded by Egypt and Israel. So until the Arab world actually becomes much more stronger and viable, and then Palestinians, as being Arabs, as being part of the Arab world, could come back and say, look, Israel, we need to have an equitable solution to this conflict as Arab-Israeli conflict, because it still remained as Arab-Israeli conflict. It isn't a Palestinian-Israeli conflict by itself, because Israel still get opportunity arises, it still expand. And it has expanded in southern Lebanon, because where the water is. and still occupying Syrian territory, and some Egyptian territory in the south too.
I don't think that we have a leader. I think part of the problem is we lack a leader. For all the criticism that some have of Yasser Arafat, including in our own community and the Arab world, the fact was he did achieve something that nobody else achieved. People said we didn't exist. We did exist. He forced the world to recognize us. He forced the United Nations, which created Israel, to recognize us and address us, to give us recognition. And I don't know if it was a mistake to engage in peace talks with Israel, because I support compromise, because I believe in the long run in compromise, and I think many Israelis recognize this, that the Arab Palestinians will eventually take over everything. And I don't think they want that kind of compromise, because they see, the end of their experiment through real compromise and, a peace accord. So I think conflict, what we continue to push for, actually sustains Israel. Conflict keeps Israel alive. Conflict continues to fund Israel. Conflict is what is the base and foundation for Israel's continued existence. And without it, I think that they're in jeopardy of falling apart. And so in a way, it's our resistance that actually keeps Israel alive. Why not even try to force ourselves? Let them annex, for example, why not this option? Let them annex all of the West Bank and everything, and then force the world to force Israel to accept non-Jews as equal citizens in the West Bank, in Israel.
Well, it might not be easy as that, because Israel, could be cleverly annex the entire West Bank and take the whole thing to themselves and not give Palestinian citizenship. For example,
and why should? Yeah,
I tell you.
Go ahead.
Puerto Rico is a U.S. territory. It's not a U.S. state. So Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens, but they're not U.S. nationals and citizens. Right. They cannot vote in the U.S. elections. And mainland U.S. So an Israel could annex the West Bank and make it territorially as part of Israel, but give the Palestinians sort of like residency papers, not Israeli citizens, just as Palestinians in Jerusalem. That Palestinians in Jerusalem, they are part of, Jerusalem has been annexed since 1984 and 1982 as part of Israel. They said it's the capital of Israel. Now, I, for example, as Palestinian citizen of Israel, in Jerusalem, I don't have Israeli citizenship if I'm from Jerusalem. I have a temporarily Jordanian passport and Israeli ID card that says I am resident of Jerusalem. So they could still annex Jerusalem and not become a citizen, as in the case of the Palestinians in Jerusalem. So therefore, they could annex Gaza or the West Bank, and you become a part of Israeli, state, but not an Israeli citizen, and you cannot vote. So it's not easy,
but couldn't? What if we? But why wouldn't we fight to force Israel the way they forced South Africa to change? Why don't we become part of Israel? And then from the system, even as oppressed non-citizens, we could still protest. We could still demonstrate. We could still resist. But
I tell you why this is impossible. I tell you why. Because the Zionism is establishing a homeland for Jews, not for Israelis. It could be an Israeli, but not Jewish. But the Israel and the Zionist thinking and the foundation of Israel is a homeland for Jews. So a Christian Palestinian citizen of Israel, they're not considered a full citizen because I'm not Jewish.
Yeah, so shouldn't we point out their failure, though? I mean, if that's the goal of the Zionists, no, but they failed. They failed. They don't have a Jewish state. They have a Jewish state with non-Jews living under oppression. That's their idea. I don't think that's
Israel have laws in the books that says Israel is a Jew. That you as an Israeli, you're not full Israeli citizens, and as have done against Arabs mainly. And there are 5. I mean, Israel, it would be, I think, if you understand Zionism, it's impossible for them to accept 6 million non-Jews into the country. It'll be like 50% Jews, 50% Arabs.
Right.
So I don't think.
And that's what annexation is going to bring. But isn't that what annexation is eventually going to bring? It's going to eventually create a situation where they can't avoid us.
Well, I tell you, on both sides of the River Jordan, there are 10 million Palestinians. I did the numbers. 10 million Palestinians between East Bank and West Bank. So Palestinians are there. And the dilemma for Israel and the problem for Israel, that there's not, and this is quoted in my piece by Joseph Massad, there's not a place in Israel, not a single spot in Israel, that does not have Palestinian or Arab claimants of that spot. So
right.
Say, well, this is, so it's a very complicated conflict in a sense. And without, like you said, without coming to an equitable that has not been reached yet, it's this conflict will continue to rage on. And the Middle East, things don't die easily. People still remember the Crusaders 1,000 years ago. So I don't think this conflict will go away so easily, and it will continue to rage as long as there are Arabs and Israelis. A conflict, it will continue to be a conflict.
All right, Ali Younes, my guest, thank you for joining us this morning. Where can people go to read your columns at Al Jazeera English?
Yeah, they could go to aljazeera.com, www.aljazeera.com, simple as that. My story, I think, is it's on the front page in the website. And you could just Ali Younes, Younes, at aljazeera.com. They can find all my work that I cover the Middle East and the U.S. as well. You can see all my work there.
That sounds great.
And
Ali,
on Twitter,
listen.
on Twitter. They could follow me on Twitter at Ali, ALI_reports. They could follow me and see my work there.
All right, and I follow you there. I think you're a great writer, Ali, and a good friend. I always appreciate discussing things with you, and I hope everything goes well. Thank you so much, Ali.
Thank you, Ray. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll talk to you later. And this is Ray Hanania, the end of our show. You could get all of my columns by visiting thearabnews.com to read all those columns on the Middle East, on the op-eds, the perspectives, and especially some series that I'm doing on the Qatari Emir out there. You can check all that stuff, too. I'm Ray Hanania. Thank you for joining us. You can get this podcast later afterwards by visiting thearabstreet.org or go to hanania.com. We want to thank Layla Al-Husseini for all the support she gives us and the hard work to keep this radio show on the air Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. until 9 a.m. Eastern in Detroit. Ray Hanania and Mike, thank you again in the studio for managing all this. We appreciate it. The Facebook side worked really well. The Zoom side still needs a little work. Last time it did. This time it didn't. I got to figure out what the issue is. Anyway, thanks, everybody. You have a great week. We'll talk to you on the second Friday of June. Bye-bye, everybody.